everyone, welcome to Singularity Computers Client Build 15 Part 2. I wanted to spend the first part of this video answering some of the questions from Part 1 of this build log. I was actually going to do this in a subscriber video because I also have a big announcement to make and a lot more to talk about. But I've decided to do it in this build log to change things up, to make things a bit more interesting, and also because I'm going to be cutting this build log short. I'll talk about why coming up. A lot of my long-time subscribers have been telling me that they've recently seen a big change in the comments on my channel. Before I go any further, I just want to say that I strongly believe everyone has the right to say whatever they want to, so I don't have a problem with anything in the comments personally. I just think it's time I answer a lot of these questions that have been coming up over and over again on my channel and address a lot of these comments, and because I like to stay focused on the subject. The reason I started my channel, which is to share my knowledge and to share a passion. So anything outside of that just goes unnoticed. And I've decided it's time for me to start a question and answer segment. So that's something else you're going to see coming up soon, where you can ask just about anything you want. I'll get to as many of the questions as I can and hopefully do about one of these videos per month, depending on how many questions I get. So I don't get time to answer many of the questions and comments on my channel, but I certainly get to see almost every single comment that goes up. And I have also observed this change. And what I've observed is a shift in focus. When I started my channel, most people knew why I was making my videos. They knew that I was making my videos to share my knowledge, and they had a similar focus. The focus was on the information in my videos, and it was about, sharing a passion, helping each other out with each other's builds, all of that. But now the bulk of the focus seems to have shifted from the information in my videos to what I'm building, and just solely what I'm building. And when I think about the reason for this, really, it's fairly obvious. When I started my channel, there was nobody else I knew of, no one I could find at all, sharing detailed information on water cooling and high-end systems on this subject at all. And back then, water cooling was so small, it was so niche, and nobody that I knew personally, none of my family or friends, when I talked about it, had no idea what I was going on about. And the water cooling companies, there was hardly any of them. Most of them were struggling, were really small. There was even limited overclocking components back then. It's just been amazing to see how far it's come. But back then, there was also a fair bit of elitism. The people who knew a lot about it didn't talk much and kind of pushed new people away. I did see a lot of that, and you even still see that now. And I was completely against that, and I back then was just looking around for some good information but could not find any. So I decided that I was going to do my videos in such a way where I shared every little step in detail and gave away all of the secrets I possibly could about every single one of my builds, because I realized that if somebody just wants to find out what one fitting is, they see a fitting used in a certain way and think, that's a great idea, I've never seen that done before, but what is that combination of fittings used there? I wanted to make sure they could get that information in my videos. And, so right from the beginning, I had the commitment. I decided these things even before I started my channel, that I was going to share my knowledge, share my passion, and do things in such a way where I provided maximum detail. So obviously over time, sharing that much information is going to have some kind of an effect. And for those of you who have been subscribed since Nighthawk, and for those of you who saw Nighthawk, when I started building my systems this way, they were completely unique and there was no one else doing it. And you could see that with Nighthawk. It was something completely new and different. Acrylic tube, no one had ever seen it used before. As far as I know, I mean, I'd never seen it used before. I'm not saying I was the first one, but it was after Nighthawk that everyone started using acrylic tube. And I'm not saying that was because of me either, but I did tell everyone how to do it. It's been over 3.5 years now since I started my channel. And after all that time of sharing my knowledge, the information has really gone full circle and, come back to me, because it's now become so widespread and easy to access that it's almost becoming mainstream. And really, where the change in the comments lies, and what I'm seeing in the comments, is that people are craving change. And what certainly doesn't help is that for the past year or more, I've gone back and covered a lot of the things I'd already covered for newcomers. And so really over the past year, my channel has come to a bit of a standstill compared to how fast things were moving before that. I mean, for those of you who have been subscribed since the beginning of my channel, you'll know how far my channel has come. But obviously what this means is that I need to continue developing, changing, adapting, innovating, and moving forward. And if my ideas are good, hopefully leading the way. And obviously I knew this. When I started my channel, I knew that I was going to have to continue adapting and changing and moving forward. And so I've had a number of long-term goals, dreams really, that I've been quietly working towards behind the scenes. But you have to understand that a lot of these goals, or some of them I've had even since I was a kid. And, the rest of them since I became interested in computers, really right from the start. And, I mean, these are dreams, and dreams are not easy to reach, to achieve. And these things take time. And they also take a lot of hard work and commitment. And that's the next thing I wanted to talk about, because, people are craving change. And so there's all different things I see in the comments stemming back to this, but something that is commented on a lot is that people want to see me changing it up every time, using different components every time, because people are tired of seeing EK water blocks, bits power fittings, Asus ROG motherboards, black ice radiators, noise blocker fans, and Mayhem's coolant. And I would love to be changing it up every time, experimenting with new components, absolutely. But as I always say to people in the comments, these are client builds, so the decisions are not up to me. But that just frustrates people even more. And I can understand that, because there's so much more to it. There's a lot of different reasons I use the parts I do. And the one personal reason is I've been building systems for over 15 years now, and water cooling for around 10. And when I started water cooling, there was almost no water cooling components. So I was using plastic irrigation fittings and irrigation hose and cable ties. The loops just looked terrible, but I've had many years to experience and test the different manufacturers and components. And obviously I started building my systems like this at some point. And as I mentioned before, when I did, they were unique. There was no one else building this way. But I've settled on these components after many years of experience and testing. And particularly in client builds, I just cannot use anything that, from my personal experience and testing, has any kind of a risk of failing. Basically, I'll only use components that have a perfect track record for me. So that really says something about the parts I use. But think about that. I'm not just doing that for the client, it's also for me, because if I were to have to repair one of my systems, most of them ship internationally, it would be devastating for me, because I would have to ship it back across the globe, fix it and ship it back again. So I just cannot risk that happening. So that's the one personal reason I use the parts I do. But the biggest reason for the similarities between my builds is clients are obviously highly likely to order something based on what they've seen me build. But there's also the problem of product ranges. Now, in more than half of the systems I've built since I've started my channel, if I were to use any other water block manufacturer but EK, I would have to mix water block brands. What I mean by that is, what if you want to use a certain water block manufacturer and use a CPU, motherboard, and graphics card water blocks, but they only have a water block for the CPU? Well, then you would have to mix water block brands, and no one is going to let me get away with that. No one's going to put up with that. I'd get a hard time in the comments, that's for sure. So because of that, most of the time I've had to turn to EK. And that also goes for bits power fittings. The range is just, far bigger than anything else out there. They have every fitting you can imagine, and because of that, it means complete freedom when building a loop. And it means I can do things with bits power fittings that I'd never be able to do with any other fittings. And the way you've seen me build my loops, what I used to call crystal link configurations between the water blocks on the motherboard area, that used to be unique to my builds. I could only do that with bits power fittings. There was just no other fittings that allowed for that. So that's another big reason. But the good thing is the other manufacturers are expanding, building up, improving. And I talked about the elitism that there used to be in water cooling, and still is to some extent, but we should be inviting new people in as much as possible, because the more people that have a passion for this and the more it builds up, the better it's going to be for everybody, because that means more competition, more opportunities, innovation, new technologies. And really, I think water cooling is in its early stages. I think that it has a long way to go. I think there's so much more that could be added to it. And I personally have so many ideas. But I know that this still hasn't answered it for a lot of people. And this is where a lot of the frustration really comes from when I say, these are client builds, it's not up to me, because people just say, well, that's your fault for doing things the way you're doing them. Why don't you just go get sponsored and get everything for free? And so many people seem to have this misconception that people who are successful, who have achieved something, have just been given it all for free. And I get an amazing amount of people asking me, how do I get free parts? How do I get free review samples and free builds? And they're completely serious, because people think that if you start a tech channel, you can just go ask for parts from the manufacturers, but that's not the way it works. Most people have to work hard for everything they get. And becoming successful, and let me just say, I don't consider myself successful. I think I've got a long way to go. It takes commitment, sacrifice, and hard work to get somewhere in life. And when I started my channel, I actually had to purchase components to review them, and I still do that even now, because what manufacturer is going to give you any review samples if you're not getting enough views? There's nothing in it for them. There's not enough exposure. It would be charity, and everyone has to earn a living. You can't just expect to get everything for free. And it's not until you get bigger that they'll start taking interest in you. But even then, you still have to work hard for each component. You need to do a review. A lot of the time, the amount of cost and time that goes into the review is worth more than the component. A lot of the time, you have to give the component back anyway. And you'll never actually get a component you want. You'll only get components that the manufacturer wants exposure on at that point in time. So there's no way I could get an entire build, let alone with the parts I wanted, let alone one per month, which is about how many build logs I'm doing. So, it just doesn't work that way. Now, a few people have also mentioned crowdfunding, and that is definitely a great idea. But I'm basically already doing that. And some of my clients have actually realized this. It's amazing. People often say in the comments, why would you have a custom system built when it's so fun building them yourself? Well, some of my clients are good system builders. You know, they could do it themselves, but they realize why I'm making my videos. They realize what my channel is about, that I'm sharing information, sharing a passion, and they believe in it, and it's important to them, and they're essentially crowdfunding, you know, because another build means more content, more videos, and it means I can sustain the channel. Because that really, since I've started my channel, has been one of the biggest challenges, is sustaining the channel. And everything I've done since I've started my channel has been for the channel. You know, I've put more time into my channel than I've ever put into anything else I've ever done. Basically, since I've started my channel, it's been 12 to 16 hours per day, and I've only really had a couple of days off since the beginning. So that shows, you know, it's extremely important to me, and everything I've done has been to support the channel. I only build custom systems as content for the channel and to sustain the channel. And so, you know, that's what some of my clients have realized, and they're essentially crowdfunding. But when I have a website, I have a lot of ideas for different systems that I could set up to crowdfund builds, and then, you know, possibly give the builds away when they're done and have people vote on which parts to use, and you could do a lot of really cool things. I've always wanted to invent, design, and build things ever since I was a kid. And, you know, when I was younger, for a long time, I was interested in downhill mountain bike riding. So I used to draw up all these different frame designs for downhill mountain bikes, you know, with certain swing arm and pivot designs that, you know, were completely unique, and designs for forks and everything. And, you know, I was obsessed with that. And when I became interested in computers, the urge only became stronger, because I became interested in computers through gaming because I was a kid, but it wasn't long before I started pulling them apart, figuring out how they worked, and, you know, just every component I laid my hands on, I'd think I can improve this, I can change the design. But I never really had the means to do any of it. But it's been something I've been working towards for a long time. And what you're about to see on my channel is the first of my designs. I'm going to start building my own components. I've recently expanded because I realized, you know, I actually started working on this more heavily when I first started my channel. And I thought about doing it all myself, but I realized that the result was going to be very limited, and that I wouldn't have time to do anything else. So I wouldn't have time to make videos, and that's really what it was all for. So I knew that I would have to bring on new people, and that's where the biggest delay has been, finding the right people. Not just people with the skills I need, but moral people who actually care about the result of their work, the quality. And the funny thing is, I've found that people with OCD are the best people to work with in this area, because they torture themselves if they don't get it right. I know that if they don't get it right, they won't sleep at night, so I don't have to be looking over their shoulders, because I have OCD, I know what it's like. And I've now found the best team. I've brought on 3 new people, 2 of them I'm still training. One of them is just incredibly skilled. So I now have somebody to do each of the aspects of what I want to do. So, you know, custom paint, airbrushing. I have somebody that is just amazing, can do things with custom paint I never even imagined. And, you know, he's been doing it for nearly 40 years and is just amazingly skilled. But the first components I've decided to release, because eventually I'd like to, I have ideas for all different water cooling components, even, you know, new technologies, inventions. There's a lot I'm working towards, but I decided I've been modding cases for a long time, and cases is really where I'd like to see a lot of the change to begin with, and I have a lot of ideas for cases, so that's where I've decided to start. So very soon, certainly before the end of the year, you're going to see the first of my custom cases. I'm currently working on 4 different custom cases, and something else that really took a long time was I wanted to do things in a certain way. And just to give you an idea of what I mean by that, 2 of the cases I'm currently working on are built completely from carbon fiber. And the materials I'm using, 7000 series alloy, titanium, carbon fiber. In one of the designs that we've just completed, I'm not sure if it'll go ahead yet, but I don't want to give too much away. I won't tell you the theme or anything, but it needs to have a lot of gold components. And, we could have just chromed the components in gold quite easily. But we're going to use real gold and plate the components in real 24 karat gold. As I've explained, my channel is all about sharing information. And that's why, even though these are client builds, my process is completely transparent. I share all of my secrets. Everybody gets to see everything I do in my client builds. If I make a mistake, if I'm lazy and do something badly, everyone gets to see it. And even though everything is about to change and I'm about to start releasing my own designs and ideas and inventions, my own components, I still want to maintain this transparency. I want this to be a journey, not just for me, but for all of my viewers and my subscribers. You can be involved in the new ideas and the innovation and moving forward. And I'd love to see a lot of your ideas as well. Throw them out there in the comments. So I want this to be for everybody who is involved, and that will also move on to my website, which is hopefully coming out early next year, 2015. So if in a business sense, if that's what all I cared about, really what I'm doing is a very bad idea, because particularly with my own ideas, I should be not showing any of the process, not giving away any of the secrets, shutting all of that down and just basically advertising, and that's it. But that's not what this is about. This is about my channel, the reason I started my channel, and eventually the website. But anyway, there's 2 more builds before the custom case build logs begin. And that's why I wanted to complete this build log as quickly as possible, because I have so much coming up. So I wanted to cut this one short because this build is certainly something everyone's seen before. And I knew that there wouldn't be a whole lot of interest in this build, certainly nothing new. But I have so much coming up that is, completely new and different. Even the next 2 builds really show off a lot of the new capabilities that I have. Client build 16, the next one, is very unique, very different from anything I've done before on my channel. Chroming, incredible custom paint candies, extensive mods. Client build 17 has an awesome theme. Again, incredible custom paint and mods. So 2 exciting, both small form factor builds actually. And then the custom case build logs begin. I'm really tempted to talk a lot more about what's coming up in the future of my channel. But, the custom case build logs are starting soon, and obviously you're going to start to find out a whole lot more then. And I don't really want to reveal anything more until I have more to show. But I'm now going to get back to this build. At this point you can see the system is complete, and I'm not going to cover any more of this build at all, although I do have a few little things I'd like to talk about. After that, I'm going to move on to the test results and then conclude this build log. And in the meantime, I'm going to give you a good look around at the finished product. Now you'll notice I've used black and red coolant, and in the CPU, motherboard and memory loop I've used Mayhem's X1 UV red. In the graphics loop I've used Mayhem's pastel black. And it appears mainly on camera that there's a slight discoloration to the Mayhem's pastel. It's actually called pure black. And on camera it looks like it has a reddish or brownish tinge, but it's massively exaggerated. In real life it actually is a slight grey tinge, but not enough to actually be a problem. Now, as I mentioned, I built this system over 9 months ago, and I actually purchased this coolant not long after it was released. So it could have been a discoloration problem in an early batch of this coolant, or it could just be something about this build that is, making it look like it is discolored. Because in client build 14, which I built a number of months after this build, I used the same coolant, Mayhem's Pastel Pure Black, and for those of you who have seen this build, the coolant just looked incredible. Such a pure midnight or jet black, and it's really an amazing achievement by Mayhem's to create a coolant that is so black that the light barely penetrates it, also considering it's a nano fluid, and because it's opaque, it's just perfect for a black coolant. Mayhem's also has a black coolant in their X1 range, but the X1 range is transparent, and so it's called oil black, and it really does look like oil. Because it's more transparent, you can obviously see through it and it looks more brown or even yellow, definitely like oil. There's just so many different options from Mayhem's, to cover all of the different builds, themes and possibilities. And then there's also all of the dyes so that you can color the coolant yourself. So there's just literally endless options. I'm now going to move on to the test results, and I'm going to start with the temperature results. First of all, I did overclock this system. I took the CPU to 4.6 GHz, 1.4 volts, the memory to its XMP profile of 1600 MHz, 99924, 1.5 volts, and I left the graphics cards at stock. For all of my temperature testing, I mathematically adjust my ambient temperature to 20 degrees Celsius. All of my results are in degrees Celsius. For the idle test, I cold boot the system and let it idle for 30 minutes. For the load test for all of the components, I use the AIDA64 stability test for 30 minutes. So starting with the CPU, at stock clocks at idle 23 degrees, overclocked at idle 24.5 degrees. Stock clocks at load 49 degrees, overclocked at load 69.5 degrees. For the graphics cards, at stock clocks at idle 20 degrees, overclocked at idle 20 degrees. Stock clocks at load 40 degrees, overclocked at load 40.5 degrees. Now, the hottest temperatures I saw for the motherboard was 32 degrees, for the PCH was 26 degrees, for the PLX chip was 32 degrees, and that was when the system was overclocked at 100% load. I also have temperatures here for the power supply, which is the AX1200i. At idle, 23 degrees, at load, 31 degrees. Now moving on to the power consumption results, and this was when the system was overclocked. Idle 170 watts, load 950 watts, and that was the absolute maximum, the highest I saw the power consumption go. Now moving on to the performance results, which I have in screenshots. I have stock clock results and overclock results, and also results for the Samsung 840 series RAID 0 SSD configuration. it's now time for me to conclude this build log. To finish what I was saying about the change in the comments on my channel, which is really what this video has been about, I believe that, or from my perspective, part of it comes from people just wanting answers to their questions and comments, because so many have gone unanswered for such a long time now on my channel. But I think the bigger part of it comes from the fact that people are craving change on my channel, which is why I thought I'd dedicate this video to answering both of those things. So I spent a lot of the video answering the questions that seem to come up the most, and I'm also going to be starting the question and answer segment soon on my channel. And I also made the big announcement, which is obviously the answer to people craving change. And for anyone who missed the announcement, well, you're going to be finding out about it soon enough anyway. I'm just so excited about what's coming up and to show what I've been working on all this time, and to be doing something new, something really different. And you know, I hope and I really do think this is going to be the beginning of something big. You know, I have my website coming up next year also. So there's just a lot to look forward to. But what I'm most excited about is, you know, when I really have something to show. That sums up this video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, and favorite if you want to see more.